What I'd like to do in my time is pick up on a point, Commander, that you made at the latter point of your testimony. That is the caregivers program. As you know, Congress did the right thing in 2010 by developing a very effective program for the families of injured soldiers from Iraq and Afghanistan. Tell me if you believe, and why you believe, or your staff may want to jump in, it is important to extend that caregivers program to the veterans and their families of all wars. Sir?
Thank you, Chairman Sanders. It's extremely important. I had a fortunate situation that I had 4 sisters to help me stay with my mother and father when they were ill. So I was fortunate in that aspect, but everybody's not that fortunate. And we believe that it's such a great program, but we know there's hardships on other veterans, pre 9/11 veterans, veterans that's out there trying to take care of their families. So it's very important, and it's a great program, and that's why we believe there's a need out there for that program to extend to the other class of veterans.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask another question on an issue that you didn't get into. Most medical specialists believe that dental care should be considered as part of health care. And most people perceive that in America, as a nation, we have a real dental care crisis. A lot of people can't afford good quality dental care. The legislation that I have offered includes a significant pilot project to begin to bring dental care into the VA with the understanding that dental care must be considered a part of health care. You can't segregate it. You can't isolate it. Commander, I'd appreciate your thoughts or your staff's thought on the view. Should dental care be part of VA health care, sir?
I'll take that one, Mr. Sanders. The number one issue that Guard and reservists could not be sent to war was because of dental. They were put into units until they got their dental taken care of because they couldn't afford dental care in the outside world. We cannot allow veterans not to afford dental care in the outside world. You're right on target, and the VFW supports you.
Thank you. So I think as most people know, dental care is provided for service-connected problems, but not for non-service-connected, and I think we have to move forward in that direction. My last question deals with an issue, a very sensitive issue, in that, as I mentioned in my remarks, some 2,300 men and women who served in Iraq and Afghanistan came back with wounds which prevent them from having babies. Should, in your judgment, the VA help those families be able to have children if that is what is important to them? And that raises the issue of reproductive health and so forth. Anyone want to take a shot at that?
I'll take a shot at that, absolutely.
Yeah. The issue there, and you know, everybody put yourself in the place of a young man or a young woman who serves the country, who wants to start a family and now is unable to do so, and it's terribly important to them. So I thank you for your support of that, and we are going to do our best to get legislation passed which includes the VA helping those families get the help that they need. I'd like to now give the mic over to Chairman Miller. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Commander, there has been a lot written in the press over the last year, and in particular about the disability claims backlog. There's been a huge focus by the Secretary and people within the department to try to reduce that backlog, and you mentioned it in your comments, but what I'd like you to expound on a little bit is where it concerns me, and I know it does you, where VA may be sacrificing quality of the decision of the rating and the benefit or in the name of increased production. I know that you said you recently made a visit to the St. Petersburg RO, and obviously that's in my state, and I visited it several times, but I'd like to know what type of issues you discovered while you were down there, because it doesn't appear to have been a very positive visit. So accuracy being sacrificed for productivity, and then the St. Pete RO visit, if you could expound on that a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, you know, there's a great thing about being Commander-in-Chief of the Veterans of Foreign Wars is that I have certainly subject matter experts. When I said we went down there, we as in the VFW, not myself personally, so I would take that to those that was actually there. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, when we went to St. Pete, I think all over the country, VA is in a hurry to meet the 2015 deadline, and we are in a hurry for them to meet that. But when you do things like physical examinations coming back from the medical center that you know is not ready to rate the case, but in a hurry you rate the case anyway, which means that the rating is not accurate. All of the little things that happens during the rating process is now hurried. And the thing that we worry most about is we want our service officers to be included to do quality reviews. As you know, when the claim is rated, the service officer have 24 hours to be able to respond to that and says, yes, we agree or we don't agree. And we want to make sure that that happens to keep us involved in the loop so that we can help them and also help veterans to say, this is the mistake that you're making. I'm not sure that there's a specific mistake that all of them make, but when you rush things and you don't take your time, there are many mistakes that's made that hurts veterans.
There's a lot of focus on 2-year-old claims and older. Supposedly they have all been resolved. I would just like a show of hands of anybody in the room that may have a claim that's older than 2 years old. Okay, thank you very much. Commander, you mentioned that your members have encountered delays in receiving specialty care. And what I'd like you to talk about a little bit is what services, other than dental, what services need to be more readily available, and what do your members see as the greatest barriers to receiving some of that care?
We have one staff member in D.C. who's dedicated to responding to issues, compliments, complaints, issues. We established years ago a 1-800 VFW 1899 telephone number. And over the years, we've gotten thousands of issues that have been presented to us. We continue to hear about mental health. We continue to hear about specialty care as far as orthopedics and so forth. I will be more than happy to get the list, provide the list to you of what we do hear about and what we see. Depends on where you are in the country, depends on all kinds of things. The VA doesn't really have a truly good appointments system. You know, you should be able to get on a computer and make your own appointment. What we continue to hear also is people that will have an appointment who get called and they say, the doctor's not going to be in tomorrow, we have to reschedule you, you'll be rescheduled for God knows how long. And that's very critical on the mental health side, and it cannot exist. I mean, we can't have that kind of things going on in the mental health. But we'll provide you with that list that we have.
Thank you, Bob. I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. Senator Johans.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and again, thank all of you for being here. Your testimony was great, Commander. I certainly appreciate that. The Chairman is right. Your written testimony is lengthy and filled with great information. Let me, if I might, zero in on something you've mentioned both in your written and oral testimony, and that's VBMS. I don't have at my fingertips the amount of money that our taxpayers have spent on this system, but it's a ton. We all know it's a ton. And The whole idea was that we would improve processing of applications, we would increase accuracy. A lot of promises were made when this thing was being debated. Let me just ask you point blank 2 questions. One is, do you think those promises are being kept? Do you think this system is delivering? And then number 2, kind of linked with that question is the question of, do you think we will meet the target of eliminating the backlog by 2015? And I'm going to open that up to anyone else up there or out there that is at the table that would like to offer some thoughts on that. So is VMS doing what it should be doing, and are we going to meet the 2015 goal?
If I may, Senator, VBMS is having some fits and starts, unpredictability and downtime and so forth. They still haven't fully integrated the veteran service organizations into the process on everything that has to be done with VBMS. We think it has the potential to do everything that it said it could do. We continue to be concerned about the push. 2015 has become the law of the land, and in our opinion, if the backlog was 200 days before they started this initiative and it gets down to 140 days, that's a hell of a progress. And if the error rate was 67% and it gets down to 90% or 85%, that's a hell of a progress. So we don't see that they need to keep that strict 125, 98%, because what it's doing is putting a lot of pressure on people, and they're making mistakes, as Mr. Bradshaw recently just said. Will they make the 2015 number? I'm not sure. But in the same respect, they need to continue to be paid to get the IT money so that they can continue to advance the system. Remember, they started with nothing but paper. So they started at ground zero and are working their way up. Your oversight, continued oversight, is very, very important to hold them accountable on what the heck they do.
You know, I'm in this unique position. I've decided I won't seek another term in the Senate, so at the end of the year I kind of wrap it up. And here's kind of how I feel about these things. I think it's important to keep the promises we've made to the veterans. Now, I love adding things, and I see from the applause you do too, but having said that, it just seems to me we're not keeping those promises. And if you've got to wait forever to get your disability rated, that's not fair. If you've got to wait forever to get mental health services, my goodness, wait for mental health services? What if you're in a crisis, you know? How does that work out? Or what if you're right on the edge of the crisis? How does that work out? It doesn't work out. And I'd like your thoughts on that. Doesn't it seem important that we kind of take stock of where we're at and be able to say we're keeping our promises that we've made with past legislation? Because I think we're failing today at doing that. I'd like your reaction to that.
I think we've got a long way to go to keep the promise. As a nation, we weren't ready and prepared for what happened with the 2 wars and the influx of people, casualties, and the severity of their casualties. Mr. Miller's going to love this one, but my favorite phrase is there is a lack of leadership, management, and accountability in many parts of the system that need to be held accountable.
Yeah, I could not agree more.
If you know, I think most people come to the VA every day, want to go to work and want to do the right thing. But if they're not led by the right people, if they're not mentored by the right people, if they don't get the right training, and they're not told when they make a mistake that here's the mistake you made, learn from it, and let's move forward, you just have a system that continues to go bad.
Yeah. I'll just wrap up with one last thought, if I could. I think there, fortunately, in this arena, veterans issues have been bipartisan. It's one of the things I like about sitting on this committee. We don't fight about who's Republican or Democrat typically. It's there, but it's, yeah. We want to try to do the right thing. And here's what I would say. It is so important for your organization to reach out to somebody like me on legislation. I'm in the minority. I'm not running anything, quite honestly, but I want to hear from you because I want to have a discussion about with you about what aren't we getting done? What promises aren't we keeping? Should we prioritize those promises? What about our $18 trillion debt? We don't want that for our kids and grandkids. Veterans are who they are because they put the country above themselves. So I think these are very important issues. You're always welcome in my office, Commander, Mr. Wallace, whoever you want to send over, and we will always make time for you to hear you out and have a good debate about where we go forward and how best to do veteran services. Thank you. God bless you.
Congressman Michaud.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And once again, Commander, I want to thank you for your testimony, for being here this morning. In your testimony, you caution that VA needs to maintain oversight of the patient-centered community care, the PC3 program. What specific danger do you see in the rollout of this program, and are you primarily concerned with the lack of standardization in that program?
Mr. Michaud, just like the state-run nursing homes that the VA contributes per diem to, they have to have proper oversight. They have to have proper oversight. We also have to worry about, to make sure that the quality of care that they're being delivered is there. We think it's a positive thing, though, because you can't build VA structures all over the country, and if you can get care in your local community for primary care or specialty care that you may have to drive 300-400 miles to in some parts of the country, that's positive. But we're very concerned about the fact that VA has to have proper oversight. And we've told them that, and we want to see reports of what they do as this program continues to go forward.
Thank you. Do you feel that capital leasing, well, when you look at the construction, I mean, we've underfunded that for a number of years. Do you feel that capital leasing or construction which one is a better approach to meeting the VA's infrastructure needs that they currently have?
Thank you, Mr. Michaud. I don't know if you can put one above the other. They both are very unique. We need both. We need to pass into law Mr. Miller's bill, H.R. 3521, that will extend the capital leasing. That's very important for the community outbased clinics that have expired. Veterans are having to go out on be fee-based out, which is more expensive, so we need to pass that. We also need to properly fund the construction programs. Since SCIP was introduced, the strategic plan for capital infrastructure, it really laid out where the deficiencies were, where the gaps in safety, where the gaps in access were. Since that's come out, each year, major construction has been reduced by a third. The funding for it has been reduced by a third each year after that. That's going in the wrong direction. That we need somewhere around $60 billion to close all those gaps. Maybe construction isn't the right direction to go. We need to look into, but we need to have an honest, open debate on what direction to fill those gaps moving forward.
Thank you. My last question actually deals with state veterans homes and taking care of the long-term care needs of our veterans. As the World War II veterans and Vietnam-era veterans are moving up, there's definitely going to be a capacity issue at the VA. And when you look at the report that just came out early this year, the GAO says it's more cost efficient to take care of veterans or in the state veterans home versus the VA system. I know there's some question about the cost estimates. Do you think Congress should actually start focusing on some of the longer term needs that we haven't focused on, such as the long-term care needs of our veterans? And if so, what do you think is the best way of dealing with that? Since in a lot of states, whether it's Florida or Maine, we have a great, state veterans home operation within different respective states out there. Any comments on that?
I definitely think you should be, Congress should be looking at the State Veterans Home Program and expanding it. It's cost effective, and the quality of life that a veteran or a family member receives in a state veterans home is second to none. I had the privilege many years ago of running the Veterans Affairs in the Garden State of New Jersey, and I had 3 nursing homes at that time, veterans homes, and you just walked down the hall and some veterans organization was with you, and somebody said, my television broke. 2 hours later, they got a brand new television. They have all the quality of life issues. They have everything. And it's, again, it's cost effective. It's closer to where the residents of the homes live. It's easier for families to get there. It's just a positive, and it's a win-win for everybody. And I would urge the Congress to look at that as we go forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Now we're going to go to other members. Congresswoman Walorski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to add my welcome, Commander Thien, to your wife. It's good to see fellow Hoosiers here. I'm so proud of what you've done. And I just wanted to say that I'm humbled and honored to be in this room with all of you from the VFW. I just wanted to thank you for your service and let you know that, to me, you're the hometown heroes all over this country, and I'm grateful to be serving on the VA committee and advocating on your behalf. So thank you for being here today. My question is, Commander, and maybe to Mr. Wallace as well, I share your concern on the 5 items that you talked about, Commander Thien, and particularly am concerned about the issue of the alarming increase in suicide, and have had the horrible misfortune of having that already in my district, and I've only been in Congress 15 months. I think it's horrific. And my question is, do you think the lack of coordination on the transition services between the DOD and the VA is improper? Is that the place when it comes to transition services that we should be looking at this? Or what are the recommendations of the VFW? I am all ears when it comes to what more can we do in making sure that we get the proper mental health services to our soldiers.
We spend a lot of time on military bases, visiting military bases, and talking to service members here and overseas. There's still a stigma in the military to say I have a problem. That stigma then relates to what could happen after the fact. There are some good programs out there. One of them is a Warrior to Vet peer helpline that's set up that DOD has now embraced. It was a National Guard program, and it's now expanded to DOD. So people can call and ask the question, is it common to be experiencing this kind of issue or that kind of issue? I think there's also an awareness problem in society. We try to tell our VFW members to, when they talk to someone, to see if there's something that doesn't sound right or seem right, that you can do something. The sad thing is, 1 year ago, we came to town, and one of the individuals who came was a Iraq War veteran, and gung-ho. He was the first one in the lobby going to go visit his congressional delegation. He was the last one at night that took all the notes and everything else. 3 days after he left here, he committed suicide. No one had any idea. Further investigation found out that he was a patient at the VA, and he was really getting, counseling and everything else, and he had some real serious problems. So sometimes you can't even tell that, but I think the more awareness that we get out there is better. This peer-to-peer group, I think that the VA has started, I think there's 1,000 of them initially now, and should be expanded, because it's an opportunity to get it off your chest. Nobody goes into combat and experiences what individuals that go in there see and comes back the same person. We all handle it different. We may have families that do it, may have friends that can help and work through it, or so forth, or get us help. So the more awareness that we can promote, the more positive comments that are made by people that it does take a hero to go get help, I think is what's necessary. Also, a concern that we have is the VA mental health timeline, that 14 days, that they put in effect. Is it really being met, or isn't it? GAO says it isn't, the IG says it isn't. Those kind of things, I think, have to be, firm. And when you call for an appointment at VA, someone's got to make sure that they're triaging you and getting you into care if you need that care right away, because it took a hero to make that phone call.
Absolutely.
If you're not under VA care.
And one quick follow-up question. On the issue of MST, we've been very involved as a committee on the House side on legislation with MST. What are you hearing from the ranks in the VFW from folks about additional services that need to be provided from the VA, about their issues? Are they being addressed? You know, we did some bills on travel reimbursement in rural areas because folks couldn't even get to places. What are you hearing on MST follow-up from the VA?
We're hearing past the Ruth Moore Act in the Senate. That's number one. We're also hearing that VA is getting better. They're not asking victims to get into a room with a bunch of men and have a counseling session. They've learned. They're starting to learn. But we're also hearing that there are some barriers out there. You know, people aren't very comfortable sometimes and have to get the right clinician and so forth.
Okay.
Again, if we have a list, I'll be more than happy to provide it with you because it's a very sensitive issue, and it's male and female.
Correct.
And we have a couple of males that are part of our organization that have come forward to us and they asked for help that said 20 years ago, 25 years ago, I experienced something that has been built up in me, and with all this publicity that's coming out, I finally feel I can talk about it, and can you help me get some care?
I appreciate you. My time back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Congressman Waltz.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you, Commander, for your testimony. Most importantly, thank you, all of you, for coming here. You know why you came here. You know why it's important. And I often say, looking at this room, it's a visual representation of the conscience of America. And if we ever need a reminder, yesterday morning, a plane landed at Dover carrying the body of Marine Corporal Caleb Erickson from Waseca, Minnesota. 20-year-old was killed by this nation's enemies in Afghanistan. As the commander clearly said, this war is far from over. And the business we do here is serious business, dealing with this nation's national security and keeping the faith with those who are willing to put themselves on the line. Corporal Erickson's family did that. They will know that pain forever. And while it was their son, he's our warrior. And that responsibility to get this right, to be 100% right, is absolutely unwavering. So I know how frustrating it can be. Some of you have been doing this for decades. Democracy takes active participation. It takes work, and you know that. My biggest fear is to ever imagine looking out at this room and not seeing you here. That's the fear we have. So we have work to do. There's things we can get on. I certainly believe we are capable of doing it. The frustrations we have, and I always say I'm the VA's biggest supporter, but I am their harshest critic when they need it. And I appreciate this committee. Chairman Miller has clearly pointed that out, where there are shortcomings that need to be addressed, and we need to get them. I have one question that I'd like to see on this. There's a young man named Jason Earhart was lost a leg and an arm in Iraq, getting care and rehabilitating. And a few years ago, we were able to pass a provision in the Camp Lejeune bill with TBI that said the VA was taking their responsibility to rehabilitate these folks to a certain level. And their goal was to get Jason healthy, and they did wonderful care and get him in a wheelchair. And then the suggestion was the family is that he may need to be institutionalized in a home. What they didn't count on was that wasn't quite Jason's plan. He decided he'd get better, and he decided he would continue to make improvements. And he decided that he didn't want to be told. He said, what kind of man wants to be told he's plateaued? I haven't plateaued. And then he told me, what kind of man wants to drive a damn minivan? Can't they outfit a truck for me so I can drive that? And he started talking like that, and we said, this nation has a responsibility to bring those warriors back to the highest possible functioning we can ever get, and we don't know what that level is. And through Senator Sanders and the others who worked on this, Jason's family has helped, and the Caregiver Act is helped, but it failed them in times. There's more that we can do. My question to you is it time for a national TBI center, like a PTSD center, to take this outside research? I represent the district that has the Mayo Clinic. There are breakthroughs on the horizon that can bring these warriors back, that can bring their lives back to a level that we couldn't have imagined. Is that something we need to do? Is that the way to go on this, in your opinion, or not?
First of all, I think every disabled veteran wants to get back to normal life and excel. Your example is just one, and there's many more out there. We don't know enough about the brain and the mind and what goes on and how it's affected. We don't know what causes me to have PTSD and not you, or you to have it and not me, and we both experience the same traumatic event. We need to do more research. We need to put more money into it to figure this out and get it right, so that if we figure out that you're susceptible to PTSD, we don't send you into a situation where you may be affected and have that for the rest of your life. I think National Centers of Excellence are something that should be done. I think DOD and VA should be sharing more of that information and working closer together. They should be in lockstep in how they treat people and how they hand them off. I think you're on the right road, and we support that.
Great. We'll pursue it. I'd like to make one final comment, and on this, Commander, as it was said by my colleagues here, your national staff is second to none. I appreciate that. Bob Wallace has worked closely with us. We have the POW-MIA Commission focusing on our counterparts in Russia, which is very timely right now, where we've worked for decades because of the archives the Russians have that allows us to try and track down and recover our warriors and get them home as we promised. I would encourage all of you, whatever you can do, to continue pushing that, to make sure that that's a priority, because I am always very fearful. We have Senator Chambliss and Manchin over in the Senate, and myself and our hero, Sam Johnson from Texas, work on that. Through Bob's help, the State Department and others, we're making progress. My fear is that during this time of tension with the Russians, we lose some of that momentum, and more importantly, we lose the commitment that all of you know is so important. It's so much more than people. It's the whole faith and the values of this nation that we continue to strive to make sure every single one is returned. And yes, it's hard work. Yes, it's long, but we have to keep that open. So I encourage you to do whatever you can do to continue to push to make that happen. And I yield back.
Thank you very much. Congressman. Congressman Kaufman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you all for coming here today. Let me just ask one question. How many Colorado VFW members do we have here today? Please raise your hand. All right. Oh, that's great. That's great. Come from a long tradition, military tradition in Colorado. My father was a World War II veteran and a Korean War veteran, and I was a First Gulf War veteran and Iraq War veteran, and I'm proud to be with you here today as a life member of the VFW. So thank you.
I'm a life member of the NRA.
That works. Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Thien, I want to thank you, the VFW, for endorsing my VA Construction Assistance Act that aims to help the major hospital projects underway in Aurora, New Orleans, and Orlando. Would you please elaborate on VFW's position on the ability for VA to successfully construct and manage large-scale facilities such as the one in Aurora? Aside from funding, what reforms should VA look for in order to improve?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. We're happy to support your legislation. I think it's moving in the right direction. The VA has proven time and time again that given a large-scale project, they take too long and they spend too much money to get it done. Your legislation will allow them to use the resources within the Army Corps of Engineers to be a project manager, to make sure that there's some efficiencies, that there's a standardized method in which they go about doing each one of these contracts, that there's enough people in place, that there's a single point of contact, not three people responding to one response and giving three different answers to the contractor and something going in the wrong direction that they have to fix later. So what you put in your legislation does move in the right direction. We're happy to work with you moving forward.
Thank you very much. The transition assistance program for our active duty personnel moving into civilian life, I'm very concerned that there's not an adequate job by the active duty military working in conjunction with the VA to make our returning service members really aware of all the benefits that they have. And I really found that to be the case, certainly on the issue of apprenticeship programs and on-the-job training, that a little-known program that allows them to use their GI Bill benefits towards that purpose. And what efforts can be made to improve the success of on-the-job training programs to get our vets into great careers? Mr. Wallace, is that your area?
That's another awareness issue. TAP has gotten a heck of a lot better. It really has from what it was. Everybody's required to go, and they do have the modules that they are offered. What we're hearing at some bases is that the contractors who give the presentations can't answer a question. So if I asked about apprenticeship, they'd say, okay, give me that and we'll get back to you. And some of the soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines are saying that nobody ever gets back to them. So they're reading a script and they don't have the technical knowledge. Some places, like I was just at Fort Hood last week, and at Fort Hood, the VA folks work hand in hand with the TAP folks, and if they have a question, they'll email it to them or they'll ask them to come over and clarify it for everybody. It's a learning process, this new TAP program. I think we've got to watch it. You got to look at it, you know, after it's implemented for 18 months, 2 years, to see where it's got to be fine-tuned. But as a former speaker of the House of Representatives said, all politics is local, and some facilities like Fort Hood are doing a good job. They're going above and beyond what has to be done to do it. So I think you got to continue the oversight and the awareness program. It is an information overload. There's no question about it. Sure. When you're sitting there for 5 days, you're getting information overload. And maybe I don't understand something. I may have even been told it, but I don't understand it really. So I think we got to just watch it for now until it grows and matures, and then fine-tune it as we go forward.
Well, very quickly, does the VFW have a position on alternative treatments for TBI, PTSD, like hyperbaric oxygen?
We have not specifically said hyperbaric oxygen. We've spent a lot of time with former Secretary of the Army who's been pushing hyperbaric oxygen, how to meet with some staff members on the Hill and so forth. We want all alternative medicine methods looked at. We want anything that can make life more productive and improve the quality of life for America's veterans, our military personnel, and their families done. So, as I say once in a while, if it's flipping a switch on a light, that's going to help them do it. Hyperbaric has come back with some reports of the trials that were done at Lejeune and Pendleton, and I think it was Fort Carson and Fort Gordon, I think, did the trials. They didn't say that it was a benefit to individuals. Yet there are some tests that have been done in Louisiana, and they're doing some good stuff in Colorado, but it's outside the system that's doing it because it's not FDA approved and so forth and so on. If hyperbaric works, we want it implemented. If something else works, we want it implemented. But the clinicians will not push hyperbaric until it's results of the studies and the trials have come back positive. That's the roadblock that veterans are facing. That's why they're going out to the outside to get that treatment.
Thank you. I'll continue that discussion offline. I yield back.
Congresswoman Brownlee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I too want to thank the Commander for his testimony today and your written testimony, and to thank the VFW for what you do every single day on behalf of our nation's veterans and for your service to our great country. Thank you very, very much. And I too would like to recognize any California members who are here today that I could offer a warm welcome. Any other California members? Well, thank you for leaving the good weather of California and tolerating our snowy DC weather here. So thank you very much. I wanted to inquire a little bit more on, Commander, in your written testimony, you discussed the need to expand the Veterans Retraining and Assistance Program, the VRAP programs for our older veterans. And I actually today introduced a bill when I've called it the Help Hire Our Heroes Act, which would extend that program. And I certainly could use your help on the bill specifically, but would really like you, if you would, to elaborate on what you believe some of the benefits to that program are.
Thank you for the question. The benefits are that veterans that don't have any other resource for employment, they're out of every other resource. The state unemployment has run out. They don't have any more GI Bill eligibility. They may have had a career, and because technology advanced, they've worked themselves out of a job. They need to be retrained. This is a perfect opportunity for veterans who are a little bit older to get an opportunity to get those basic training skills to get back into the career field. We found with the existing model that it needs to be expanded a little bit. Some four-year colleges probably could provide some of that training. It's limited to two-year institutions, which reduces accessibility for a lot of veterans. Yeah, some community colleges are good, but there's some community colleges that have one program that's a four-year program that cuts them out. We need to make sure that every program that should be eligible is eligible, not just a narrow focus.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. I also wanted to ask a little bit, I appreciate in the testimony the emphasis on female veterans and their quality of health care within the VA. I'm just wondering if there is there any data that you have? My concern, I agree with the concern, and my concern is how we in Congress provide the right oversight, because I'm not sure that we have specifically defined all of the needs that we need to undergo to make sure that we are providing parity both in physical health care for women and mental health care for women, because I think in both cases that care and that delivery of care may very well be different. So we have a very large country and an expanding women in the military and women veterans, and I'm wondering if we have sort of the data to know where the gaps are and what we need to be doing and how we can oversee that.
Thank you, Commander, and thank you for that question. I certainly don't have data for that to give you, and I think that maybe we could probably do that. But I can speak personally. I have a unique perspective, maybe that I'm a military retiree, so I am eligible for TRICARE. But I am also a disabled veteran, and I use the VA. In fact, I use the VA primarily for my health care. My experience is that women's health care in the VA is inconsistent, as you alluded to. Across the country. I live in Jacksonville, Florida. We have a brand new VA clinic with a very robust women's health care center. It's private, with private entrances and privacy allowed with the veteran and the doctor, which I think is important to some women. So in my experience at my clinic, it's absolutely excellent. I'm very happy with it. In fact, I'm happier with that than my civilian doctor and that I have in TRICARE. But I know that across the country it is not that way in every facility, in every clinic. Some of the limitations are physical limitations of the actual clinic, the facility itself. Some may be implementation issues. Oversight issues, a variety of things. But I can't speak from personal experience in my clinic that I use. Excellent care, excellent doctors. The only complaint I would have is the consistency and continuity of the doctors that are in the women's clinic. They don't stay very long. And that may be just a VA problem in general with doctors. I mean, you get comfortable with one doctor, one gynecologist, and you have him for a while, but they just don't stay very long. And I have a feeling that's across the board in other areas of healthcare as well.
Well, thank you for that, and I would very much like to work with you in the VFW so that we because I do think it's important for us to solve the problem. We have to clearly identify the problem, and I think we have on a on a broader scale. But I think that that definition needs to be very detailed, city by city across the country. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, very much. It really is a real honor to have you here, Commander Thien, and I want to echo the fact that you've heard so much, that your staff in Washington really does do a good job, and we really appreciate their help in presenting us with lots of facts when we need them and then pressing forward. The other thing I'd like to say is we really do appreciate the auxiliary. I like to tell the story about, I've got a wife and 3 daughters, and about being at a meeting that I was very familiar with, and I said that the auxiliary there was the backbone of the organization. And I know that's true in your organization. On my way home, my wife was with me, and she said, John, they're not only the backbone, they're the brains. The other thing that is so important, again, it's great that you're here, Commander, and your team, but the most important thing is that the room is filled with people that have made the trip. And Mike and Tamara Switzer from Arkansas are a great example of that. But there is no substitute for you being in the offices personally, and I think your team up here can attest to this, talking to your congressman, talking to the staff, and letting them know how important these issues are, not only here, but also back in your state and things like that. I'd like to talk a little bit about the, trying to get the, not just for mandatory accounts, but for the discretionary spending also, so that we can have extended budgeting periods. I agree with you, Mr. Wallace, and that, we've got some real problems with leadership and things in the VA, and we've got tremendous people there working hard. But how much more do we compound that problem if you don't know what your budget's going to be until you get into the cycle? We had a great display of, we've got something accomplished here. A few weeks ago, we passed an appropriations bill. The problem was it was 3 months late. How does any business, how does any family, run their own finances when you simply don't know what your funding is? So, again, can you all comment a little bit more about how important that would be to get this done?
Funding is key. The issue of more veterans into the VA and the unknown cost is something we've talked about at length. There are some precautions that have to be made. Number one, we have to make sure that the disabled veterans are top priority. Number two, we have to figure out a source of income. Maybe it's the veteran who comes in has to pay more money. Number three, we have to put in some restrictions to make sure that I, as a medical center director, aren't going after those people instead of taking care of the disabled veterans. I think it's a positive idea, but I think it's something we have to work through, and we talked to the staff about doing that to make sure that we can give veterans the opportunity, if they want to come into the system, to come in. And if they're not service connected, then there's a price for admission and so forth. But then we get to the capacity issue, which how many can come in at one time, and that's what all has to be studied. But I think we should give the veterans that opportunity, but we've got to look at all the corners and so forth.
We appreciate that. The other thing on the committee, House and Senate worked very, very hard. You all worked very, very hard to get a very, very robust GI Bill passed, and we can be very proud of that. The idea that we can't get state institutions or institutions in general to apply in-state tuition makes no sense to me. We're literally, as a result of passing that bill, have dumped many, many millions of dollars into their coffers. And like I say, that's something that we need to get done. In regard to veteran suicides, it's such a complicated effort, or not a complicated effort, but a complicated situation. We've got a lot of veterans that haven't overtly killed themselves, but they're drinking themselves to death. They're self-medicating, or they're using prescription drugs or other things that they shouldn't be doing. They tell us that around half of the people that have committed suicide have never been deployed. So it's not an easy situation. And then in the veterans community, the average age is older, we're up around 50. So what I would like to do is really, anything you can do to survey your members, anything that you can do to help us with the root cause would be very, very helpful. My concern, and I think we're better at this now, is simply the VA. We put so much pressure on them, and you all put pressure, we put pressure, that they are doing a much better job. There's a tendency sometimes to medicate individuals in an effort to do something rather than getting to the underlying causes. And then in some individuals, instead of that helping, it goes the other way. And I think, actually makes the situation much worse when individuals become suicidal. So can you comment on that a little bit for us?
DOD was atrocious for just giving people medications. They'd give them 90 days worth of medication, send them out on the street, and then go get a VA appointment, get another 90 days worth of, and you could sell them on the street, trade with people, use alcohol and what have you. They've gotten better than that. The warrior transition units and the wounded warrior regiments now have case managers who manage, and most people that are on really powerful drugs don't get more than 7 days supply. And they're monitored constantly, but that doesn't prevent them from going out on the street and doing it if they're not taking care of the other causes that they have with the drugs. I think VA is getting better at it. I could never sit here and tell you that throughout the whole VA system they're adhering to what should be done, because as you say, the easiest way to take care of a patient is to just give them the drugs and say that'll keep them quiet, and that's not what we want to do. We want to take care of that individual in the right way. I think it's getting better from what we've seen in the past, but there still is a long way to go.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commander Thien, I'd like to give you my perspective as a freshman member of Congress, new to the Veterans Affairs Committee in the House, and just thank you and your team and the members of the VFW for helping to make this a successful year for us and to get up to speed on the issues where we didn't have the subject matter expertise, meeting with our staff, the testimony from Mr. Kelly, Mr. Wallace, and others on the subcommittees on which I serve, and your feedback on legislation that we've worked on to improve that legislation has been invaluable. So I just want to thank you and tell you that it's made this first term in Congress so far very effective for us, and really appreciate what you and the VFW do. Of the issues that you brought up in your testimony, perhaps the most acute for the constituents and veterans that I serve is access to mental health care and to mental health care providers in El Paso, Texas. We serve nearly 80,000 veterans in that VHA clinic right now. We have had a very hard time fully staffing the manning table as prescribed, very difficult time recruiting and retaining mental health care providers. We've gone so far as I've personally called recruits, a psychiatrist that we were trying to hire in El Paso. We've worked with the local VHA to hold them accountable. We've had numerous meetings with Dr. Petzel to make sure that we're getting to that 14-day commitment that we have so far failed to do. We're working on legislation right now that would give psychologists the authority and the responsibility of prescribing, something that happens in the Department of Defense right now. And to Mr. Wallace's point about that being an easy fix, prescribing versus a comprehensive therapy, we understand that danger, but we also have a shortage in prescribers in El Paso. I think about when I was campaigning for this office, meeting a young, very young Afghan war vet who had PTSD, was in El Paso, didn't have family or friends or a network or roots in that community, was attending community college on his post 9/11 GI Bill, working in a restaurant at nights, told me he had PTSD and was supposed to see a therapist every week. He said he was lucky if he got in every 6 or 8 weeks. Every time he went in, it was a different counselor or therapist, so there was no continuity in care. And since then, since I've been in office, I've found that the problem is worse than we thought. We surveyed the veterans in the community. 25% who've tried to make a mental health care appointment were not able to make one within 12 months. So given some of the things that I've described that we're working on, what would you or someone else on the panel that's there with you, what would you recommend that we do in addition to what we're doing right now?
Good question. Seriously, there's not enough mental health providers in the country. And if I am one, I may not want to come to Texas. That's another problem, where they are. That's why this PC3 is positive to get. They have a network of mental health people that they used to use, TriWest does. They used to be used in for DODs or TRICARE. So you have a cadre of people there that can help them. But it's a difficult issue. And the other side of that is that we're very concerned that they don't lower the standards of what they consider a mental health professional. If I graduate today with a bachelor's degree in sociology, am I a mental health professional? No. I've got a long way to go to get to that degree. So we're also riding VA to make sure that they don't do that. But they've got to do more work with universities so that they groom people down the road. But that's not helping today in Waco or wherever, or in New Jersey or Connecticut or Wyoming. It's just not doing it today. It's a real serious problem. And I feel sorry for that veteran who's supposed to be seen every week and is not being seen in 12 weeks. I mean, that individual's got some real serious mental health problems, and somebody should be watching him very carefully. And the VA's negligent by not seeing him. I mean, that's unacceptable.
And I'd just add that it's not exclusive to these young veterans returning from Afghanistan and Iraq. I've met with a PTSD support group for Vietnam-era veterans on several occasions. The shortcomings in access and capacity are being felt by them as well. And it really begs the question asked by the senator earlier when we talk about meeting our commitments before we add additional services. I take it one step further, and I don't know that we can add additional wars and add additional commitments when we can't take care of the veterans who have served in the wars so far. And that's always present in my mind as we look at commitments that we're making around the world. So with that, I'll yield back.
If I may just say one other comment, the vet centers are a very positive program, and you should be encouraging VA to get more vet centers going on because they're great out in the community. People can go that don't feel comfortable in going into a VA medical center and so forth. That's a very positive program, and if we expand those, it'd be a plus for all veterans, because Vietnam veterans are using vet centers more than current war veterans are.
Okay, thank you. Senator Verona.
Thank you, Chairman Sanders and Chairman Miller. Good to see you. I want to add my thanks to all of you who are here for your service, and I'd particularly like to give a shout out to the VFW folks who have traveled from sunny Hawaii to cold DC. That's what I call solidarity and commitment. So Frank Bragg and your wife Susan, George Bartlett, Norbert Enos, Fred Chang, aloha. We've gone through a number of questions that runs a range from how do we provide adequate health care, mental health care, how do we address the military sexual trauma issues, et cetera. So I'm really glad to have sat in for all of those questions. Now, Commander Thien, you did mention in your testimony that it would be helpful if you could get third-party billing reimbursements, mainly from Medicare, for the non-service related healthcare services that are provided by VA. Do you have an idea as to how much in reimbursement this would be? Anyone can answer.
Thank you for the question. I'll follow up. I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 billion a year.
$3 billion. So you could do a lot with
Absolutely.
$3 billion a year. Although, of course, that creates, I suppose, a challenge for Medicare, which is having its own issues. I also note, Commander Thien, in your testimony that you mentioned the new GI Bill comparison tool that the VA recently released with the Department of Education. And so this is to enable veterans to really comparison shop with various institutions of higher learning, and I think that's great. However, for example, I did log on to the University of Hawaii and the information given under the University of Hawaii, and I noted that one of the pieces of information that I think would be really helpful is how how much is the actual cost of going to the University of Hawaii, and what would be the gap between that actual cost and what the GI Bill would cover? So wouldn't that kind of information, which I'm told is available, be good to include in this new tool?
I'll answer that one as well. VA has just recently rolled out its comparison tool. It's on their website. You can find it there. And yes, the TAP program should be letting veterans or service members know as they leave that that's a place for them to go as they make their college career choices, what's best for them, what's most cost effective for them, where the programs are that they want to take part in.
But would you agree that there probably could be more information that would be helpful to enable the veteran to make a good choice?
Access to the information, yes. I'd like to wait and see how the comparable tool works. We've used it. We've sat around the office and used it and thought, holy cow, that's very good. It's very comprehensive. It'll allow you to compare anything from prices to the degree programs. So it goes, but service members and veterans do need to know that that tool is there. So what we can do to outreach to make that known to them needs to be.
I would agree. The first thing is that they should know that it's available to them, and the second thing is that we want to make sure that the information contained therein is as informative as possible. So having looked at what was in the University of Hawaii information, I think that we probably could put a little more without adding to the cost of the whole thing. Okay. I know that there are various federal veterans preference programs and laws, for example, in employment, in contracting, etc. Has VFW done any analysis on these preference laws as to which ones really work, where improvements could be made, etc.? Because we want to make sure that what we put in place really does the job, and maybe we can, there's certain programs that work really well to enable our veterans to come back and have the kind of quality of life and work that they are entitled to. Anybody want to respond to that?
I don't know if there's been clear analysis of what's worked great and what hasn't. If you look across departments, you see some Department of Veterans Affairs, DOD, that have very high hiring of veterans. You go to the Department of Energy, it's very low. It may be skill set. It may be the desire of the individual veteran of where they go. So meeting that 3% may not always be there. Also on contracting, getting service disabled and veteran-owned businesses to get those contracts. That process needs to be a little easier. Getting their name into the system right now is a little tough. So we need to figure out how to get their business into the pool of businesses that can get those contracts a little bit easier.
So some kind of analysis would probably be useful. With your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a note that since there were so many questions relating to how we provide mental health services to our veterans, I just want to note that David Frankel, in his most recent book, Thank You for Your Service, notes that there are some 500,000 of our troops who have come back from service in Afghanistan and Iraq with who are mentally wounded. So the need is great. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me wrap up the hearing by thanking all of you from coming to your nation's capital from all over the country. Thanking Commander Thien and his great staff for their comments and their response to our questions. In a sense, what you have seen this morning is what you have fought for. This is democracy. And what this means is that our job, who have been elected from states all over the country, is to listen to your needs. You elected us. You defended this country. And what our job is now to work in a nonpartisan way, and I really want to say that I think in the House and in the Senate, you're looking at committees that are serious about these issues. And I believe that we are going to overcome a lot of the partisan nonsense which takes place here in Washington, that in fact we are going to do the job that you sent us here to Washington to do. And with your help, we're going to pass some strong legislation that will make you all proud. Thank you all very much for being here today.